Tonya, welcome to the Total Skin Nerds podcast. We're so excited to have another Canadian female entrepreneur.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is always one of the best parts. I feel like you can maybe agree, but it's like you get to chat with people and go deep, and it's just like some of the best parts of my day. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
It is the best part of being an entrepreneur is to have this opportunity, as you say, to talk to, in my case, experts in their field who are doing some really cool things in the wellness space and to just really learn a bit more about what you're doing. So Tonya has a company called Rainbow, which I'm obsessed with, and I'm holding up the product now for anyone who's watching on video. So my daughter found 1111, which is her sort of multi-mushroom tincture, at a little shop in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia called Fiends, and started taking it and swore, like, not only did her skin look great and she felt great, but swore that it was helping to keep her healthy. And it was during COVID and all, we were starting to open up and everything was going around. And I started to take it, and I travel a lot and I catch everything. And I legitimately, knock wood, haven't caught anything this winter. And I credit it to 1111. And I also spike it with some extra lion's mane. And we'll talk about all these wonderful things and what they're all for. So tell us a little bit about, Tonya, how did you become so interested in fungi and mushrooms, and specifically the healing power of ingestible mushrooms?
Well, thank you. And it's so cool that your daughter found it, and it's at a witch store, which is fitting for us.
And me and my daughter.
It's fitting for all of us. And that just kind of takes me back to like just the ancient uses and the more traditional uses of these herbal medicines, and the way that my ancestors from Eastern Europe, I come from a lineage. I recently learned like 2 years ago that I come from a lineage of healers on my dad's side, and like medicine women who would go into the mountains of Macedonia and gather flowers and herbs, and get contracted by Germans to go into these areas. And they had such deep knowledge of herbs and mushrooms and flowers. And I was just like, you know what? It's so cool the way some of these things run in our blood, I feel. And to bring it back to how I found mushrooms, and it's really like I can never really tell the story without kind of going back to my healing journey and my curiosities ultimately with my body, and why, just feeling comfortable, feeling well. And as somebody who's dealt with a lot of kind of chronic conditions from when I was a teenager, that really directed my interest from high school into science and nutrition and food. So that was kind of like my starting point and the beginning of this whole journey for me, which has been just so layered and like little pieces added on as I've gone through a different stage, a different age, and just kind of like building and layering on different tools and knowledge. So for me, it really, it started back when I was like as young as 15, 16, 17, and started to progress from there. So I would say, fungi specifically, I was introduced to in 2011, and talking about the way that, wisdom and knowledge can kind of like hit you and land in you in certain ways. I feel like it's a resonance of truth when you hear something and it's beyond reason. You just kind of like know something is true in your blood and in your bones and body. And so there's been a lot of those kind of interesting moments, and just like listening to those and letting my curiosities kind of like guide me into learning more as I've gone down those paths and had those experiences. But in 2011 was really the first time I was introduced to the therapeutic potential of chaga mushroom. Never forget it. I was at this little conference in Toronto for health people. I had just graduated from my Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Nutraceutical Sciences, and it was really, really formative time. And so that was when I first started learning about adaptogens and learning
Mm.
about the intelligence of plants, and that they were more than just, grasses and shrubs and weeds growing like to your side when you took a walk, but that there was deep knowledge and healing power and medicine that we made out of this, and that was the basis of pharmaceuticals and drugs and nutraceuticals and all these things. So and when you're first learning that for the first time, I think we forget that there's so much we don't know. And so
Mm.
that feeling of when you're a teenager, when you're in your 20s and you're coming to really understand the world, and sometimes it's as basic as like really understanding where your meat is coming from, or
Mm.
what, like what a hamburger is. We do start there at some age. And so it was like these really big aha moments of like, oh my gosh, that's the way that, like, there's that. And why haven't I never learned that before? So kind of fast forward, I kind of had this reverent attitude about fungi, and was lucky enough to kind of become friends with a mentor who was really knowledgeable and who took me foraging quite a few times. And I got to learn. He was like a very prominent figure that actually was a big spokesperson about medicinal mushrooms. So I got to learn a lot from him and forage. And so that was in Ontario, like my backyard, not exactly my backyard in Toronto, but Northern Ontario, Nipissing, and starting to really come home to a deeper understanding of myself as nature, myself in nature, how to take care of myself through food, through the environment, through a deep appreciation and a more intentional way of living. And then enrolled into the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. Started learning more about mushrooms then. And then in 2016, I started using reishi therapeutically. So in pretty high doses on an 8-week protocol that was meant to support my liver.
Okay.
And we can get into some of that stuff later. But that was when I had the firsthand experience of how, like, truly powerful, how much transformation happened in my body in 8 weeks from a high dose of reishi. And it still wasn't like, oh, here I go, I have to start a mushroom company. Still took a couple years, but I just, like, there was no rush. It was just like I was passionate about fungi, I was passionate about medicinal mushrooms. And I kind of had this other health thing happen in 2017 or 18, where I was just given time. I had to do a lot of resting, and I was given a lot of time to just dive into research in my books about mushrooms. And that was where, like, the idea started coming up, where I was like, you know what? I want to create something with impact. I love mushrooms. Like, I was calling a lot of different mushroom manufacturers, just like asking for some transparency. Couldn't really find it, and was also so passionate about, like, building a Canadian business and a
Mm.
local business, and also something that could embody the values that I felt I had, and that I felt a generation of people wanting to devote themselves to work with purpose could really resonate with. And so it kind of started to form after that point in 2018. But yeah, and there's like so many stories in between that as well, with how I've kind of convened with them, my relationship with them. I always kind of, it is like truly a relationship, in terms of, I feel like I am in some form of a communion and a relationship with an intelligent species that
Mm.
have given me so much, and who I aim to represent in the truest way and in an honorable way. And that was also a really big part of it, because like I've always kind of considered myself more of a healer. Before Rainbow, I was doing one-on-one client work
Mm.
with chronic anything really. It was whether it was a psychological or which, like, I would help with nutrition, but I had my limits, or lots of gut issues, IBS, Crohn's, eczema, like just tons of different things that people would come to me as a holistic nutritionist. And I would work with them with food supplementation and lifestyle, and kind of bring it together holistically. And I would create a healing kind of protocol for them. And so to then move into a stage where I'm a business person was like a little bit of dissonance for me, where I was like, oh, I have this, like, what's that going to be like for me? Because it was it really, I felt like I was called into this,
Mm,
and that I had to create this, and not that I had to, I wanted to, but that there was like the calling was so strong
mm.
that it was happening with or without me. And so might as well just like, do this the way that my vision of it is. And so that's been a continual journey, and stepping into this new phase and what that looks like. Such an initiation in so many ways, and also a big realization and expansion that like I can be all of those things, and it's not just one or the other. It's my long-winded answer, I guess.
I love that. It's interesting. I feel like, not to sound like the old wise woman, the crone, but I do
Love
feel
the
like
crone. I
the
love her.
crone, but I feel like your generation is changing the way that we can reconcile capitalism with a sense of purpose. And it's so beautiful to see. And I love your website and how you talk about your purpose. And I love the story that you just told, because it's like you had a knowing, and you went with the intuition, and it led you to the
Hmm.
mushrooms, but it ended up being a business, but that wasn't the intent. You weren't
Hmm.
connected to that outcome. And yet I totally believe that the founder's energy infuses the business and very much drives the business. And I feel that with Rainbow. It's just your energy, and that integrity, and that intention is just so alive in the
Hmm.
brand. And I see this in other brands as well. I saw the founder of Sol de Janeiro speak at a conference last week, and I was like, her energy is incredible. No
Mm.
wonder the brand is so massive.
Cool.
I think it's super powerful. So very cool. And I know I read an article about you that said you're first generation Canadian, your parents are Macedonian, and you talked about how you think that the Western diet,
Hmm.
your lineage was not used to this
Yeah,
this processed Western sort of grain
yeah,
forward diet, and that may have also affected
I think so.
your IBS
Yeah.
and other things. I'm wondering too if that knowledge, as you mentioned, um, if mushrooms are something that you had a knowing about, if you're just really going back to what your lineage
Hmm.
has
Yeah,
always known.
I can't help but think that as well. And when I've been diving into some kind of ancestral healing,
Mm,
and not that it's specifically around food, but just like forming a deep connection with like who were these people that I came from.
mm,
I know a little bit about them, and I've been asking more questions and doing deep meditations and healings around it. But that I really think you tap into something in your DNA when you start to ask those questions, find out from your family members, connect with their names, know what their names are. I have them all in a note in my phone.
mm.
Periodically, I'll just like say them out loud. There's this beautiful kind of saying about how we keep people alive on earth just by saying their names, just by talking about them and telling stories about them. We keep their spirit alive in us. And yeah, it's been a really fascinating kind of process to dig more into that. And also it's kind of like a bit of a like this reassurance as well that you're doing what you're doing for a specific reason. And of course, we're going to do the things we do regardless, potentially of where that comes from. But I think for me, as I've progressed and gotten older, it's just been like more passionately wanting to be the truest version of myself. And there's so many layers to that, and it looks so different in so many different phases. But I think so many of us just want this deep permission to be ourselves and to be accepted as that truest version of ourselves, and to be able to be big and use our voices. And for women, that's extra hard for a lot of different reasons. And so it's just, yeah, it's a very rich experience, and it's a yeah, just I think like the inquisitive nature of curiosity, and wanting to ask those questions and find their answers. And even if we're finding the meaning and we're making sense of it through some logic, some intuition, and whatever else we might mix in there, it's still such a valuable endeavor, I feel.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So when did you actually launch Rainbow? What year was it that you actually launched the product?
So we're actually coming up on our 4-year birthday
Okay,
on
so not very
May.
long.
Not very long, but it
Yeah.
feels like it's like long, but not long. But
Yeah.
we launched 1111 was the first product I launched on May 24th, 2019.
Okay, Bob Dylan's birthday.
Oh, good. Good energy. I love that.
Yeah, good omen.
Hmm.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah, it's been a wild ride. And I really like what you said about how uh just being so unattached to outcome. I
Mm,
cannot truly emphasize enough how true that was for me,
mm,
because what I try to remind myself of as a founder and with my skill set. So somebody
mm,
else is going to have a completely different skill set who this may not resonate with, but I am a more product based founder. I love creating. I love putting all of my time and love and energy into product development
mm.
and our products and the innovation. And so for oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I
Uh,
saying?
in terms of outcomes.
Oh yes.
Out,
Okay.
yeah.
So in terms of outcomes, yes, my desire was really just to create a product that people that I felt people needed, but that
Mm,
ultimately I was going to let the market decide that. I
mm,
didn't have a business plan. I didn't say like this is where we'll be in 1 year from now, in 2 years, in 5 years. So I think that's a really, and then you just kind of continually get surprised along the way. And it's not to say that now we don't have more strategic plans and we've kind of grown into parts of that at this stage. But at the beginning, it was like pure passion. And I still like really find my fuel in coming back to that.
mm.
But I love just the ability to detach from outcome and just say, like, I am creating this because it needs to come out of me, and there is like some creative passionate force that I think the best products really come from. And when we can detach from the outcome, we can just let ourselves uh, be surprised, go along with the flow of whatever the energy is that's going to be behind this, and fuel it with the right people and energy and these kinds of things. But um, potentially be surprised, not disappointed, like all sorts of great kind of things that come from it.
I love that. I am also a product person. In fact, I've been told that that's sort of been the sole focus of the business for the last 10 years, and that maybe there are other areas of the business that we could or should develop. And I actually brought
Yeah.
a president on board almost a year ago, and an investor on board about a
Congrats.
year and a half. Thank you. But it's allowed me to really focus on what is wanting to be born
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
my creativity, my intuition, my
Mhm.
lineage. I don't know why I
Mhm.
put the things together I put together similar to you, and they just sort of come out of me. But I am now more able to really be in that space and not as much associated with sort of the day-to-days, which has been really great, because that is
Oh,
it's important to separate those two to some degree, because the creative process is so important. And if you truly believe you're putting something out in the world that can help heal people, which I
mhm.
think both of us are trying to do or successfully doing, then it's so important to focus on that. I mean, that truly
Absolutely.
is important. So let's talk a little bit about, I know there are so many, but maybe what are some of the things that that you feel mushrooms can really address? I'm specifically interested in, you talked a bit about gut health. I'm also just personally interested in sort of, any ADHD or depression. Like, what are some of the things that you've found have been really helpful, and which mushroom
Mhm.
is sort of most associated with which condition?
Yeah. So, I guess kind of two answers I'd like to go into are gut health has been a, pretty much a primary focus of mine since I was quite young. And that's just because of my allergies or intolerances, allergies, those kinds of things. So I find it interesting. Uh, and I actually just wrote a research paper on IBS and
Mm.
hypnotherapy and the gut brain axis.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's really interesting because our understanding of the gut has evolved so much just over the past 20 years. And in the early 2000s, there was like IBS was really known as an intestinal motility issue,
Mm.
meaning that it's really just an issue of motility and mobility within the gut itself. And I love science because it's not stagnant and everything really evolves over the decades. And so where we've kind of landed now and what's widely accepted is the gut brain axis. And that's basically this bidirectional relationship between the brain, the nervous system, and the intestines. And that's so fascinating to me for a lot of different reasons, in terms of what you mentioned about kind of ADHD and the mind. And that's
Mm.
a kind of a big focus of mine right now is this mind body connection. But I yeah, just digestive conditions as a whole have been a really big focus of mine, and the mushrooms have been really integral in that process. In that, I see them as more of a an assistance to any root causes of like disharmony in the body. And
Mm.
so I think there are connections that mushrooms can come into the body and help forge those connections because it's just one system, and we forget that. And the systems are all kind of working together, whether it's the immune system, the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, all of those are converging. And we're kind of helping to bring them online via various kind of practices or tools or mushrooms or herbs or nutraceuticals, whatever we're using to help forge that connection. What's so cool about fungi in general is if you look at what they do in nature, which is acting as connectivity and this connective tissue within a forest, within the soil,
Mm.
and allowing for the transportation of nutrients, the transportation of communication between, like allowing a mother tree to speak and pass nutrients to its tree baby, its sapling. That's incredible. And so I was having this discussion with an ND friend of mine who sees the same thing. She works with a lot of autoimmune patients and really sees mushrooms come in and have the ability to turn on the immune system and the nervous system and get those communicating to each other. And what they do in nature, which is really similar to what they do in our bodies, which is they act as the earth's immune system, the forest's immune system. They are fending off the same viruses and bacteria that
Mm.
humans are, which is what makes them so powerful at helping us do that as well. And so there is this ability to kind of like forge those connections between networks that has been this missing link for me. And I feel like probably not talked about as much as it could be or should be. And for me, it's funny because, there's the symptom, of course, so it's maybe like eczema or acne or anything kind of coming out of the skin or like anything else. There could be tons of different symptoms that we're expressing. But then my work has really been to understand what the expression of that is coming from and to find a root cause. And with a
Mm.
lot of digestive symptoms, and in my own case and lots of others, there's a few main things that are at play and a few main kind of targets that I always look to, which is the liver, the immune system, the nervous system, and helping to activate and kind of harmonize those organs and systems so that they can perform at their best. And when you do that, it's kind of like everything else falls into place. The body is so brilliant, so wise, knows how to self heal. Our ability to just activate self heal is the only response that like we should be really being taught,
Mm.
is because it can be fairly simple in terms of good water, some sunlight, maybe refraining or trying to kind of correct some lifestyle factors that have negatively contributed to like liver stagnation. And I can share a bit of my story around that. But when it comes to my gut healing has really been, and I still have some IBS flare-ups. It's not to say that like that's just a sensitive spot for me, so I have to be careful. But in terms of the chronic diarrhea, the bloating, the gas, the acne, the food intolerances, a lot of that stuff has cleared up, and reishi and lots of mushrooms and tools have been very instrumental in that process. Um, so that's kind of the one part I wanted to mention. And then I guess in terms of the mushrooms and what they do,
Yeah.
so there's across the board, all mushrooms are really well known for their ability to enhance the immune system, or I guess rather modulate the immune system, because they can upregulate or downregulate. So they kind of harmonize and regulate, have a regulating response on the immune system. And the immune system is going to have an effect on any other system in the body, whether that's the organs, the nervous system, the heart. It's gonna, like, it's a pretty central system within the body. And so all mushrooms have, because of the way that they're built, they have like this cell structure called chitin, which is chitin makes up the cell membrane, and that's indigestible to humans, which is why you have to create an extract of mushrooms.
Okay.
Yep. So that's going to actually break down that cell membrane and allow us to access the health promoting compounds that we're after, like the polysaccharides, the triterpenes, the phenols. There's antioxidants. There's tons and tons of different health compounds. We've only really studied 2 very well, but there are so many more that we have yet to really dive into.
And so if we eat the mushroom, we won't be able to access them in the same way because we can't get through that membrane. Is that?
Raw, yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we don't suggest eating mushrooms raw for that reason, is they do cause a lot of digestive upset, and the body can't really break that down. We need some help through heat
Okay.
to do that process. So that's why just even a light cook on mushrooms helps make them more
Interesting.
actually digestible. Sometimes they can cause some just upset, or yeah, they'll just kind of sit in your belly and won't digest in the way that they could. So a little bit of heat, a saute, something along those lines, or an extraction if you're after the medicinal compounds. So they're all really health promoting in terms of immune benefits. And then the mushrooms, I mean, they all truly have so many different properties and health benefits. So it is kind of hard to lump them into categories, but I would say as a whole, reishi, and there's a lot of traditional knowledge that backs up this, and also a growing body of evidence around around the scientific kind of studies to support this. But reishi is known as this the mushroom of immortality. So this is a mushroom that helps to calm and connect the mind-body system. And so it's known to support the mind. It has calming effects on the body. It's a known adaptogen. Not all mushrooms are considered known adaptogens. Reishi and cordyceps are. And so it's going to support HPA access, cortisol response. It's very effective for promoting just like liver support in terms of some of the antioxidants it provides, and the oxidative stress support that it helps the body counterbalance, and also has amazing anti-inflammatory effects, as does chaga. And reishi and chaga have also there's a good amount of studies around some of the kind of DNA protection that they offer on the skin. So topically, that's growing field, but in Asia, reishi is extremely popular extract that they use in skincare products. Less so here, but there's a lot of mushroom extracts used in Asia for skincare products, for hydration, plumping. There's an amazing mushroom called tremella, which we do use in our skin salve, and that's has a similar effect to hyaluronic acid in terms of helping to draw moisture and provide some plumping and antioxidant support. So there's lion's mane, which you mentioned, very very, very popular mushroom with great research to back it up in terms of what it can do to support our neurons, nerve growth factor, brain and cognitive support. And it is needed. A lot of the clinical studies are showing that it's needed in relatively high doses of like 2 to 3 grams per day. So there's with any of this stuff, it's so exciting because there's a lot of literature to show its support. And we know that there's, 2,000 years of traditional use in Asia of a lot of these mushrooms. And it's so cool for me because I love the merging of those two. I think there's so much wisdom that, we gather from traditional knowledge, and to see that really supported and backed by science, and seeing the safety and efficacy is really exciting, because a lot of us in the West are really like, that's a really good proof point for us. And so there's cordyceps as well, which is this energizing mushroom, also great for stress support, non kind of stimulating energy, but really supportive in helping to boost overall energy of the body at a cellular level. And then there's so many more. There's turkey tail. I could go on. Yeah.
It's fascinating. And so to your point on you had mentioned when you were treating your liver, you went on high doses of reishi, and then you just mentioned with lion's mane, there have been some studies at higher doses. I used to actually work for a company that we manufactured and sold fish oil to the
Mm,
supplement space, omega-3s, and there was so much incredible clinical efficacy, but at pretty high levels. And I think we're always so concerned in the Western world
yeah.
about the dose and taking too much. So can you really take too much? I mean, I guess it depends on which strain, I suppose, and what you're treating. But like with reishi, for instance, when you're treating your liver, like how much were you taking to treat them?
I was taking about 4 grams daily. Uh,
So what would that be in terms of like your tincture
In terms of
and
tinctures, I mean, if you're taking 8 milliliters of that, you're at a 1.6 gram. And that I say like is a good maintenance dose. So I mean, I was taking like 14 capsules a day. So you're
okay.
going through a bottle of, or, and for me, it was like, if I'm taking anything therapeutically, I kind of just like, capsules are pretty easy for that because
Okay.
you can just take a bunch of them and kind of put them, just like swallow them. So that's something I do want to really consider is capsule-based products for just our single mushrooms for people who are looking to take them in higher doses. But I
Okay.
mean, with Health Canada, there's recommendations of turkey tail up to 12 grams daily
Okay.
for certain immune conditions or chronic diseases. And so I think with that, it's like you don't want to take 12 grams of turkey tail every day for your whole life. That's probably really unnecessary. And it's not to say, we haven't really done a study on that, but it's not to say that the body can't excrete it through urine or different metabolites. But those are just more acute conditions where you might have something chronic that you're working through, or you might be using it in tandem with another cancer therapy, which turkey tail is known for if you're doing any chemo or anything like that. So I think there are maybe 8-week, 12-week periods where you're going to really use a high dose of something. But
Okay.
for the most part, a maintenance dose of 1 to 2 grams of a lot of these mushrooms is like more than enough for a daily basis. And it's a very safe amount as well.
Okay. So how much would that be in your tincture dropper then, would you
So
say?
if you do like a double squeeze of the white lid,
Okay.
that's 1 milliliter there.
Okay.
And so I would do 4 to 8 of those daily.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Great. And then if you're taking like the 1111, which is this great combination of all the different kinds together, which I absolutely love and swear by. I do 4 of these full squirts in the morning and then 4 at night. And then I add my lion's mane, but you can boost
Oh yeah, 100%.
1111 with other things.
Yeah, I love to do that as well. And 1111 is, when I was creating that, I was so excited about the ability that mushrooms work. They're stronger in groups, so they have a synergistic effect when they're
Interesting.
combined, which means that like 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 4, because they kind of help enhance each other's effects. Which I was like, this is like teamwork. This is so fascinating.
Mm.
And so 1111 has that power of the synergy of all 11 mushrooms. And then I would say the kind of main effects of it are definitely immune system. I didn't get sick for like 4 years using our products. And then COVID came and I eventually got COVID, but
Which is probably a good thing, I suppose.
yeah,
Like your
yeah,
immune
it's
system probably needed to get it at some point, possibly. I mean, we don't know, but
totally.
interesting. I mean, I have to say, I was the person that got everything going always because tend to kind of have a lot of anxiety, and I kind of work myself up into a bit of a stress
Mhm.
frenzy at times.
Yeah.
And travel really kind of, especially the older I get, the harder it is on me.
Yeah.
And honestly, this has just changed my life. 11:11
Oh.
has changed my life. I love the lion's mane. I just feel sharper. So let's talk a little bit about skin health, because similar to this gut brain nervous system axis, there is a definite science to support the gut skin axis. And as you said, eczema, or eczema, as we say in Canada, and acne, and all of these other skin concerns are the symptoms.
Mhm.
And with Skinfix, we're trying to get at the root cause by actually healing the barrier itself on a physiological level. But what can mushrooms do to support that gut skin axis? And
Mhm.
what specifically have you seen, if anything, in patients that have had issues with eczema or
Mhm.
acne? What has helped them?
Um, so yeah, so in terms of, I guess, my process with the acne that I was experiencing after getting off the pill, I had a lot of like dysbiosis buildup on my chin and cheek area. And so my target for that, in terms of like balancing hormones and healing some gut issues, was to support the liver. And so that was part of what we did with reishi, which is a really widely known liver support mushroom in traditional Chinese medicine. It's also recognized in the NHPD when you're getting your like license in Canada to sell any natural health product. Um, Reishi and Chaga are both very well known for their liver supportive properties, and
Okay.
so that could be um, that could be via, there's antioxidant properties, anti-inflammatory properties. The antioxidants are going to help to regulate and boost some of the oxidative stress that we're experiencing. There's of course stress that plays a role in our liver, and so at the stage of life I was at, I feel like I was kind of like uh, needing to do a bunch of healing from some of my lifestyle tendencies and practices when I was in university, drinking alcohol, drinking, I don't know, 10 cups of coffee a day, high
Mhm.
stress, zero tools to really balance and regulate. And so that was when I was using it therapeutically, and also going through an emotionally turbulent time. And I mean, it within 8 weeks, I would say my whole system was so much different in terms of like um, how I was responding to stress, and my ability to just let things roll off my shoulders a little bit more. I was in school at the time, and I was going through a breakup and all these hard things. And I genuinely felt like a different person at the end of those 8 weeks. And it was
Amazing.
remarkable. I was like, it was probably the first time also with any specific supplement where I've been like, wow, that worked.
Mm.
I really, it's like a really big difference. And this, my skin started to clear up in that process. And there was a lot of like liver supportive, other kind of things I was doing in terms of drinking a lot of clean water,
Mm.
spring water, avoiding processed foods, which I had been doing for a long time. But those were all kind of pretty instrumental in the process.
Amazing. And then did you migrate to a maintenance level of reishi? Do you take reishi daily now?
I did, yeah. I think I took a pause for a little bit right after, um, and didn't have a, yeah, it took me a little bit of time before I was, probably until I started Rainbow, where I was really like using our mushrooms every single day. And now reishi is my absolute go-to. And the cool thing is that even if you're dealing with any other root causes that might cause flare-ups or anything in the body, there's a lot of different kind of a lot of different exposures and things that our liver has to process every day, from literally pumping gas at the gas station to stress to environmental toxins, pesticides, foods, processed foods. Like it really, the list goes on, and the liver has such an important role in the body with over 500 functions that it's doing on a daily basis. One of those major ones being detoxification. And I will say that mushrooms do also aid in that detoxification process. And what is really cool in terms of some conditions like candida or parasites or mold, all of which I've gone through, and like have done testing on. So it's not just like I'm taking a guess and doing this protocol, but I have like, my mold test or my parasite tests done that show that I'm going to eradicate this. The really cool thing is that in a lot of those conditions, mushrooms, especially edible ones, because they're quite yeasty in the
Hmm.
body, they can produce yeast. They can sometimes be told that just to refrain from eating these mushrooms for, a 8-month period or whatever the case may be. The cool thing about reishi is that it's so nutritive and supportive that you can eat it through any of those conditions, and it's not going to contribute to yeast in the body. They've done studies on it for candida. It's not going to contribute to candida overgrowth. It's going to support the liver in that process. And so I've been grateful that I can continue to use that mushroom specifically while going through any kind of eradication protocols.
Amazing. And what about in pregnancy, would you
That's
say?
that's always a tough one, yeah, because we of course can't test on pregnant women,
Right.
and so there's just been no safety studies that show that you can do it either way to say it's not safe or safe. So
Yes. Yeah.
we get that question all the time, and I will say that now after all these years, we know so many mothers who choose to continue taking mushrooms through pregnancy and breastfeeding, and others who stop, and I, both
It's
both
so
it's
hard. It's not
yeah.
really a fair question because I understand, because from my perspective as well as a skincare founder,
Yeah.
we can't really advise, frankly,
Yeah.
it's like when in doubt, leave it out, I guess. But
Yeah.
I hear you. I was told when I was pregnant, my daughter's now 19, not to take fish oil.
Mm.
And, a few years later, I realized that that was really the
Yeah.
wrong decision at the time. And I suffered postpartum, and that might have helped, and all the things, but it's hard. It's a hard question to answer
Yeah.
as a founder. So curious to know what your regimen is daily with respect to Rainbow, and does it change with
Mhm.
what's going on with you, and what do you take?
Yes, it does very much change with what's going on in life. Right now, I am on reishi only, only,
Okay.
only. Yeah, and that's because I am on a parasite cleanse,
Okay.
and that's been really crazy. I don't know if you've. I mean, I'm gonna have to do an episode on that at some point, but it is it is next level wild. Just
Okay.
yeah,
Is it a specific parasite? Have you identified what the parasite is?
nope. But I've been
Okay.
seeing them come out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean,
Okay.
and it's interesting because so many of my health friends are going through the same thing, and I feel like it's something like Pluto upgrade, something going on. I mean, I'm getting married in 4.5 weeks.
Oh,
I would
wow.
I would never.
Exciting.
Thank you. I'm so excited, but I would never recommend anybody to be doing a parasite cleanse before their wedding. But here we are. Um, but right now, I am. It's gentle, and I'm feeling really good on it. But right now, I'm taking reishi,
Okay.
and otherwise, it just really cycles through what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Before that, I've been really loving reishi and lion's mane together for their nervous system support of both like
Okay.
calming, adaptogenic, kind of general stress support aligned with that nervous system, neuron health, brain health, and just that was really nourishing me for quite a few months. We're going to be launching our nervous system bundle together with Rishi and Chaga
Oh,
together really
okay.
soon. So that will be, I'm really looking forward to that.
We
And
all could,
then,
especially 4 weeks before a wedding.
yes, yes. They
And
say
what
it's one of the most stressful times of life.
it is, it can be, I
Yeah.
suppose, I
It's,
mean,
yeah, there's a lot.
a
It's
lot of
been really
things
enjoyable.
happening, a lot of things. Well, I'm glad it's been enjoyable. And have you come across any H. pylori cleanses with mushrooms? My brother's he's gonna love that I'm saying this, but is dealing with an H. pylori issue right now and a histamine issue, and
Mm.
might be an interesting episode at some point
Yeah,
for
I
you.
not specifically, but what I can say that I feel like jump started this, and like I'm just like curious explorer of my body. But
Yeah.
I started to take HCl, so digestive enzyme hydrochloric acid,
Okay.
about 3 months ago now. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the HCl challenge.
No.
Okay,
Uh-uh.
so it's basically a hydrochloric challenge that you so hydrochloric acid is an extremely important acid in digestion, and it's supposed to be produced in the stomach and kind of like help the body, help the stomach break down food. And it decreases as we age, and with chronic digestive
Mm.
conditions it is often a root cause of digestive health, and it decreases with every decade of life quite substantially. So
Wow.
I started an HCl challenge, which is very easy. You just kind of you're testing your limit to see what elicits how many hydrochloric acid capsules can elicit an acidic feeling, and you have this with meals. And it is interesting to me because um, I just started the HCl, and what started to happen, like the detox that started to happen in my body that followed that, was very, very fascinating, because it wasn't my intention to start this cleanse, and yet stuff started to come out. And so
Right.
my intuitive sense is that there was some stuff in my stomach, which is kind of where a lot of H. pylori lives, or it can. And I think there's a lot there, and I really do also believe in things working in tandem as well in
Mm.
terms of some of these um, nutraceuticals in combo with like detox support mushrooms like reishi and chaga.
Mm.
So I yeah.
Well, fascinating. I'll have to ask my brother. I know he's taking a whole bunch of things that his naturopathic healer
Mm-hmm.
has prescribed him to do, and changes in his diet, like not eating leftovers and all sorts of
Mm,
interesting things. Um,
interesting.
I don't think any podcast about mushrooms would be complete without a question about psychedelics.
Yes, of course.
I'm sure you get this all the time, but just curious to know if that's an area that you might explore. I suppose when the regulatory environment allows for it. I'm not exactly sure where we are with the regulatory environment on that, but is that something of interest to you as well?
Yeah, I mean it's always been of interest. I feel that it's hard to be a huge proponent of mushrooms without inevitably like having awoken to what their power is. And
Mm,
there's so much healing power, but there is so much therapeutic psychedelic. Um, like it is just it's the level and the ability for that level of deep healing and
mm,
deep inner work. And you know what's so fascinating about psilocybin and a lot of different psychedelic experiences is the ability for that default mode network to turn off, which is
mm.
our sense of self. And when you
Yeah.
dissolve that ego and sense of self, there's a merging that happens with other and with nature.
Mm,
And through that experience is it's so profound for somebody in there. I mean, and it's hard to say, like, ideally your first experience is going to be profound, but you know, there's so many important things like set and setting and just your mindset and your diet and a lot of things that go into the preparation and aftercare of a psychedelic experience, because they can be no walk in the park. They can be absolutely blissful and beautiful, but they're also going to present their challenges and show you your mirrors and facilitate that inner growth. But the effects of this afterglow of like that whole mode, that whole habitual side of the brain turn off for whatever it is, a 6 hour, you know, time frame, anywhere from 5 to 8 hour time frame, is so profound and so profound in rewiring the body. And so I think it's such a massive topic. I'm so passionate about it because it was pretty instrumental in Rainbow's birth story as well.
mm,
Was my experience with a powerful and very therapeutic psychedelic experience. And of course, there's the therapeutic mushrooms alongside that. But you know, where I kind of stand on it is just waiting to see what happens in that regulatory space. And I'm
yeah.
also very conscious that of not wanting to necessarily, um, you know, just capitalize that whole market like we saw with cannabis. And
Yeah.
so I think there needs to be like a lot of access, ability to grow on your own, a lot of education around it, um, and not just like this other kind of money grabbing industry, because
Yeah.
the potential and the power for it is just so so massive for how it can touch people, who it can help, the conditions, from like eating disorders to traumatic events, PTSD, treatment resistant PTSD,
Addiction.
veterans, addiction. Yeah, like the list
Yeah.
goes on. So it's a very, very exciting area of therapy.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I think one of the Netflix series, Michael Pollan, I think, was the one who said it's really therapeutic, not recreational. And so there's that whole bit
Mm-hmm.
about how one supports that process,
Yeah.
as you said, with set and setting and diet and aftercare and all the things. So it needs to be thoughtful, but
Yeah. Yeah.
look forward to seeing what you do in that space eventually once the regulatory environment allows. This was fascinating, Tonya. I could talk to you all day, but I'm cognizant of the
Likewise.
fact that I've talked to you for an hour and I'm like, oh, she probably has a lot she needs to get to. But really, really love what you do. Love your brand, and not just the product, which I think is phenomenal and powerful, but also just the whole journey that you're on as an entrepreneur and as a business person, and the intention with which you've created this line. And I love it, and I feel the energy that you've
Mm,
put into it, and it's I tell everyone I know about it.
thank you.
Also, where in the US can I order it online? I've been trying to send it to my mom, and I tried to send it through Erewhon D2C. Rob and I
Mm,
were talking about it, but that was a little finicky. She lives down in Laguna Beach. Where would you recommend?
um, we can ship. It's kind of like we have our .ca and our .com, and I
Okay,
think because you're coming in from a Canadian address, it's
right.
routing you to
Sending.
the .ca, which then
Okay,
so we can do a personal order. But yeah, so there is a bit of like she can order on the .com, or we
perfect.
can put an order in for you through the .com
Okay,
and send
great.
it to her. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Well, good to know that there is a .com, and I probably, to your
Yeah.
point, not seeing it because my Canadian IP is sending me to .ca. But
Yeah.
anyway, absolutely love what you're doing. Love listening to your podcast and following
Thank
you,
you.
and just hope that we can stay in touch, and really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.